Well, this is a bit more comfortable. No more extreme close-up. Hey YouTube, Sam Antares here for part 2 of Face Slappers, my 3-part intro to the Lucky 13 series of countdowns. Last time I was talking about the top 13 surprise troll trap cards from Yu-Gi-Oh! Part 2, we're going to be discussing spell cards. This one was a little harder for me to figure out, mostly because, well, honestly, the best kind of surprise attacks come from traps and the occasional monster effect. And so I had to look a little bit harder to find some spells that I think justified it. Even so, I think I've come up with a good 13 based on my own experiences with the game. And that would be the oven. I thought I'd turn that off. Just a moment. Sorry about that, folks. Yeah, it was actually the coffee pot, so no worries, the house is not on fire. Now, where was I? Right. Top 13 troll spell cards in Yu-Gi-Oh! Number 13. Mysterious Triangles. This one only ranks number 13 because it got on the list purely for nostalgia. For a long time, I ran the Alien deck, or my own flavor of it anyway, and this was a nice card because it's a quick play, and it deals with annoying threats because it lets you destroy any of the opponent's monsters that you've infected with an A counter. For those of you who are not familiar with it, basically it was the gimmick of the Alien deck and their way of representing parasites, eggs, whatever you want to call them. This does have some usability in terms of gameplay, because you can also summon an alien monster after destroying theirs. But said monster only lasts till the end of the turn. So basically, it's a chest buster. Gets points for nostalgia, for the alien reference, but suffers in usability, and so I really can barely put it on the list and had to really think whether it even qualified. But hey, it's my list, my choice. Number 12. Dragon Laser! Anyone who's played any old Gradius or Raiden type shooter might be familiar with this card. It ranks on the list for being a quick cast version of the Raigeki spell. For anyone who doesn't play Yu-Gi-Oh! Or only started in the last 3 years or so, Raigeki was a spell card so powerful it actually got banned from tournament play. And here's our answer. So why did they take one of the most broken cards ever made and give us a version of it that can go off at any time? Because of the cost to using it. This card in and of itself is useless and can only go off when combined with 2 other specific cards. So, hard to use, but a lot of fun. Gets nostalgia based on the fact that I also ran the spaceship deck at the time, and it's really powerful if you can actually get it to work. So it takes the number 12 spot, at least. Moving on to number 11. Okay, this one, entirely nostalgia value. I present to you number 11 of the top trolling spell cards in Yu-Gi-Oh! And on my personal ban list, under pain of a beating. Flint Missiles. In a lot of ways, it's a powered down version of Dragon Lasers, in that it can only destroy one monster, specifically a monster that's been equipped with the Flint spell card. So again, it's situational by virtue of being part of a combo. Its benefit? 1, well, it goes into Flint's effect, so we'll get into that at some other time. But 2, instead of going to your graveyard, it goes back to your deck and gets shuffled in. While this is arguably a balancing issue because they don't want you to be able to recover the card and possibly use it again right away, it actually is a second benefit because as long as you can keep Flint in play, you can fire this off turn after turn after turn to keep yourself from decking out. So it's useful, it's nostalgic, and it's fun because, sure, I mean, a lot of people, at least at the time, were afraid of Flint. When this was new, nobody saw it coming. Even for common, it wasn't that hard as easy to come by, so it was a nifty little surprise if you happen to be running a deck that could use it. Number 11. One moment, sorry, that backlight is really... Well, that's a bit better now. Sorry, that backlight was just bothering me. So, where was I? 13, 11. Alright then, so number 10. Another card that gets on here mostly for nostalgia value is Question. This is a resurrection card. The problem is, unlike Monster Reborn, Call of the Haunted, or any of the others that actually saw serious play, you don't get to choose the monster that comes back. Your opponent does. The way Question works is you ask your opponent if they can remember the first monster that was sent to your graveyard. If they get the name wrong, or if they simply give up, you can summon that monster. However, if they are able to guess correctly, that monster is removed from play completely. A risky card, but a fun one, and if played mid to late game, it's almost guaranteed to go off unless your opponent has really been paying attention, because it does state that they are not allowed to check your graveyard after it goes off. Also, another possible use for it, and anyone who's watched the series might know this one, it doesn't have to be a monster that they sent there. As long as they cannot guess the bottom in your graveyard, even if it's one you killed, then it comes back. This one used to see a lot of casual play. I did try using it in some tournament decks, but found that it wasn't reliable enough to be useful. Around the kitchen table, though, it's great. It's a lot of fun. And you should hear the words people will come up when they know what the monster is, but they can't remember its name. So, I'd say it ranks up there. Actually, not for being trolling, but just for being funny. Number 9. Oh. On the other hand, we have cards that are just rude. Number 9 on the list is one of those. Terminal World. An underused and probably for good reason spell. I think I was the only person out of my group of friends that ever really found a use for this thing. Its effect is simple. It only can be activated during the first main phase, and as long as it stays in play, neither player can have their second main phase, thus causing your turn to end immediately after attacking. So, we've taken Yu-Gi-Oh! And turned it into Pokemon. Given that a lot of decks actually rely on their second main phase to get combos off and set up support, I had one person I'm pretty sure got an aneurysm from this thing. And in hindsight, that's really not funny at all. I should probably edit that out. Or I can just say, I'm very sorry, poor choice of words, and move on with the day. Also, he's fine. That was just a joke, if a horrible one. Moving on. Number 8. This is one that I had to decide whether or not I should actually put on the list here. Malice Dispersion. I know I said that before about another card and that it only got to number 13. But once I finally decided to put Malice Disperse on the field, I realized it should probably rank pretty high just for usability. There are a lot of permanent trap cards, which this can destroy the lot of them with a single go, and it's quick play. So this can wipe out Call of the Haunted, Fiendish Chain, Fire Formations. So, not really nostalgic use because I never used it all that much myself, but definitely usability and a nice little surprise for how little it actually sees play. Not likely that your opponent's going to have a countermeasure waiting for it. And speaking of being a troll, Autonomous Action Unit comes in at number 7. A modified version of the old Premature Burial spell. This costs you 1,500 life, so almost twice that of what Premi does. So why would you use it? Because this doesn't resurrect your monsters. It resurrects your opponents. So, you know that Judgment Dragon, Blue Eyes, or Gear Golem that was punching you in the face a minute ago? It's yours now, at a bargain basement price of less than a quarter of your health. and given this is a game where only the last hit point matters, if it gets me the win, I'll pay it. Also, stop hitting yourself. Number 6. This is one I actually mentioned in part 1 on my trap lists. Enemy Controller comes in at number 6. This card has two main effects. The first is the one that got used most often, and that is that you can change the battle position of one of your opponent's monsters. Good when they're declaring an attack, or to switch and etch one of those walls they're hiding behind into attack position and punch it. Its secondary effect sees a lot less use because there's not a lot of profit to it, but it can still be helpful. And that is to sacrifice one of your own monsters to steal your opponent's, but just for a turn. Since ultimately you're the one actually losing a monster, that second effect really only comes into play if you've got something that's very expendable, or you're about to win the game. But even so, a quick play with two powerful effects like that, definitely worth throwing around. Oh yeah. Another one that got on the list mostly for nostalgia and the looks on people's faces when it goes off. At number 5, we have Bait Doll. Yes, it looks like a voodoo doll. Yes, that's intentional. And yes, people will hate it. Bait Doll has two effects, both of which are useful. One, you can force your opponent to activate one of their trap cards, or reveal it if they say it's not a trap, and still see whether or not it's true. If you try to activate a trap that couldn't go off at the time, it destroys it instead. And the final effect, instead of going to the graveyard, just like Flint missiles, Bait Doll goes back into your deck and shuffles. The interesting thing is, since it can target your own cards as well as your opponent's, this was used in a stall play a few years back of targeting your own face-down spell card repeatedly to keep yourself from decking out while your opponent ran out of resources. If nothing else, it's annoying as hell, and isn't that what this list is about? So, number 4. Another old favorite, and one that saw play both competitively, casually, and even showed up in the anime several times, Shrink. This is a battle use spell, and the funny thing is, rather than buffing up your own monsters, as most like that would do, Shrink weakens your opponent's, cutting its original printed attack power in half. There's really not only all much I can say for it, other than, well, sucks to be you. So, we're now at the top 3, but before that, I'd like to bring up a couple of honorable mentions and show why they didn't make it. And that would be Wildfire and Transcendent Wings. These are classics from the GX era. Anyone who watched that particular anime will already know what they do. Just in case, Transcending Wings allows you to discard 2 cards out of your hand and turn your Winged Karibo, another somewhat irritating card, but not on this list, into the actually extremely powerful Winged Karibo 10, who comes packing a potentially game-ending effect. Wildfire lets you blow up your Blaze Accelerator card, and then, at the cost of 500 life points, wipe the field. The problem is it has the additional cost of not allowing you to use your battle phase for the rest of the turn. Both of these missed out because, like Mysterious Triangle, they're very situational, they're actually both very costly, and I never played either of the decks they were in enough to give them the nostalgic value. So, sorry guys, better luck next time. And moving on to number 3. So, you like screwing with your opponent's plans? You like taking defenseless mooks and making them more defenseless? You like opening up doors so you can just walk through them? Well, here's Card Rotator. At the bargain basement price of 1 card out of your hand, you can change the battle position of all of your opponent's cards in play, screwing up their entire battle strategy for at least the couple of turns they'll need to put everything back in place. Also, because most monsters will be played in the position that has their stronger stat, you have effectively weakened every monster your opponent has, leaving them open for a beating. This is a useful card. I at least side decked it, in fact played it in most of my decks, and it saw some competitive play for a little while too. I'd say a fun one to keep your eye open for, and you're probably not going to see it coming when it happens. Going to number 2. Oh look, another card I'm never allowed to use again. The targeting system for the Flint missiles, Flint. This card was actually printed several years before Flint Missile, and has a much nastier effect than just blowing up a monster. It paralyzes the equipped monster, drains 300 of its attack points, and, for extra jackass potential, it is one of the few equipped spells in the game that does not go away when the equipped monster is destroyed. In fact, it gets to reattach to any other monster in play, usually one of your opponents, but if you have to, you can put it on one of yours just to keep it there. So, we have here a set of magic bolos that cannot be escaped, tie up your opponent completely, weaken them, and refuse to go away. I'd say that definitely makes it on the list as one of the top trolling cards in Yu-Gi-Oh! And so now, what beat out Flint? A card that has nostalgic value, use, and fits the spirit of this list perfectly. Well, let's find out. Oh look, we're going old school. The one card, possibly worse than paralyzing your enemy's monster, then destroying your enemy's monster, then screwing up your opponent's entire formation. The number 1 screw you spell card in Yu-Gi-Oh! Creature Swap. Why is this card so awesome? Why isn't it? No cost whatsoever besides handing your opponent one of your monsters in exchange for one of theirs. The best part? Because you each choose your monster rather than taking the ones that you want, you can hand them something completely useless, and if you play it at the right time, they'll have no choice but to give you a better trade than what you're giving up. Not only that, it can disrupt any number of combos, it can open them up for an attack if you hand them a weakling, and because the monsters swapped go back to their owner's graveyard when they're destroyed, you could hand them one of yours that has an effect that'll activate when it's destroyed, and get both at once. What's not to like? I think the only reason this card is phased out of competitive play is it actually was restricted for a long time, and these days it tends to be better to just wipe out the opponent's monsters. I still consider it a viable casual card, and one of the ones I've had the most fun with in my career as a duelist. Thank you very much, and now that I've counted down the top 13 screw you spell cards for Yu-Gi-Oh! Come back tomorrow, and we're going to, when I post up part 3, Monster Effects. In the meantime, this is Sim Antares, signing out.